Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
And welcome into the Toasted Tavern. My name is Michael Wags, Wagon Connect, joined alongside by Scott Tobin, fresh off of a very early morning today at his radio job. Man, it's good to see you awake right now, and hopefully you're going to get some good rest tonight. But how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Yeah, deciding to fill in for a couple of weeks. Going in at 3:30 in the morning is going to be a fun adventure for the next few weeks.
No doubt. I remember those days down in Cape Girardeau, and you were down in Sykeston, and we'd be emailing each other back and forth, like, why did we do this? This is so bad.
Right.
Oh, man. Oh, unbelievable. But there is a happier note to tonight's episode because, we're going to talk about a lot of baseball right now. And you see Trevor Bauer. We're going to talk about that. You see Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Woohoo! But, man, it is July 1st. It is Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day, man.
Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. There's a bunch of people out there going, what are they talking about? But anybody that knows baseball knows that this is a great day in Bobby Bonilla's life, and is for 30 years, I think it goes on?
They basically are going to be paying him till 2035. So the Mets basically agreed to pay Bobby Bonilla a deferred salary at 8% interest after they cut him with 2 seasons left on a $5.9 million contract. Now, we look at $5.9 million and we go, okay, that's not much. Why did the Mets not just pay that? Well, this is back in the day. This is back in the early 2000s when 5.9 was that a little bit more money than most people expected it to be. So they deferred this thing out until 2035. And every July 1st, he has gotten paid for that. And I don't know if you saw this, but new Mets owner Stephen Cohen is really kind of embracing this Bobby Bonilla Day. He tried to get Bobby Bonilla out to Citi Field this year. Didn't work out due to scheduling. They kind of did this a little bit late, but he may have him there next year. But what they're going to do is they're actually opening up Citi Field to Airbnb. So on July 28th, somebody's going to get the opportunity to rent out Citi Field for $250. They're going to get use of the team gym and showers, and they're going to get a chance to throw out the first pitch against the Atlanta Braves, all to coincide with the Bobby Bonilla kind of thing. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing, and you have to appreciate the Mets for embracing that.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's something that, we talk about it every year. So, yeah, you might as well embrace it and accept it. And probably a lot of people don't realize this. After the Mets made that deal and cut Bobby Bonilla, he actually came to St. Louis for spring training and was about to make the team and got hurt. And some 21-year-old kid that nobody had really ever heard of named Albert Pujols ended up taking Bobby Bonilla's spot on the Cardinal roster. So weird how things work out, isn't it?
It's absolutely unbelievable how that works out. That's so crazy that chain of events is what essentially got Albert Pujols here in St. Louis. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time, and maybe a time where we actually get to talk to Albert. So we'll see. We're definitely going to work on that as much as we possibly can. All right, let's actually get to real baseball talk because the Cardinals are in Colorado tonight. Nolan Arenado going back home to his first team to face them tonight. And not just that. So, like, right before the game started tonight, it was in a rain delay, so it was actually a delayed start. But right before first pitch, Major League Baseball announced the All-Star Game starters. And guess who's going to be starting at third base for the National League at Colorado when the All-Star Game happens this year? Who do you think it could be, Scott?
Who could it be? Nolan Arenado?
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Nolan Arenado is going to be starting for the 4th straight season at third base for the National League in the All-Star Game, although this time he's going to be wearing the birds on the bat. So talk about sticking it to your former team before first pitch. I tell you what, if Nolan does not go off this weekend, I'm going to be absolutely shocked.
Yeah, I think he will. His first at bat was pretty emotional. They gave him a nice standing ovation. The catcher went out in front of the plate, kind of a la Yachty, and really encouraged that ovation to go on for a while. And Nolan was pretty choked up. You could see the tears in his eyes. So he popped out in that at bat, but I think he'll settle in and have a pretty good series. And, you talked about him starting the All-Star Game. There's also a chance he's going to be in the home run derby. He's been offered that opportunity. So Nolan may have a big weekend in Colorado in a couple of weeks. well, hopefully he has one this weekend, but then he can have one in the All-Star weekend as well.
That would be pretty amazing if he was able to do that. And just going to give you a quick update. Top of the second, Paul DeJong singles in Tommy Edman. Two guys who we've complained about the last week or so end up scoring the first run for the Cardinals tonight against Colorado. You got Adam Wainwright on the mound looking to win his 5th straight decision. That's absolutely incredible. Harrison Bader back in the lineup tonight for the Cardinals as well. He his first at bat is actually going on right now. He grounded into a fielder's choice to the pitcher. DeJong out at second. Harrison Bader is on first base right now. So at least he made contact in his first at bat.
Yeah, and he even talked about tonight that, his timing might be a little bit off because he really only got in 3.5 rehab games because he played 3 in Palm Beach. And then the one game that he played in Memphis got rained out or was rain shortened. They played 5 innings. So I think he got 2 at-bats in that game. So he talked about that tonight, that it may take him a little bit of time to get his timing back at the plate. But the biggest part of having him back in Colorado is to have that defense in center field and that ginormous outfield in Colorado, and then in San Francisco as well on this trip.
Well, Harrison's had opportunities to play in San Francisco, so he knows how to play that center field spot with the crooked corners and all that. Having Dylan Carlson not having to play in center field in San Francisco is going to be huge, but he will get that experience in right field, which is going to be really timely for him. Speaking about the lineup, though, we talked about this last night, actually, about how rare it is that the Cardinals' everyday starting lineup is out there. I think you said something along the lines of 4 or 8 of the 81 games so far have employed the regular lineup, and you're seeing that tonight as the Cardinals. Oh, actually, honestly, it looks like they just reviewed the play before that, and actually Paul DeJong was safe at second, and Wainwright just bunted him over. So that's a pretty good turn of events as well. But this is the first time we've really seen the real full lineup in a very, very long time. And it's nice that it's in Colorado because you get the opportunity to play in an environment where the offense could click pretty quickly. And if that's the case, this team could set themselves up on a nice run as we head into the All-Star break.
Yeah, they really could. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit last night. If you can carry that momentum over, have a good 4-game series in Colorado, and then go into San Francisco, hopefully you'd like to take 2 out of 3 in San Francisco. That's not going to be easy because the Giants are surprisingly really good. But then you're going to get to finish the first half against a Cubs team that's really reeling right now. So you could put together a really nice road trip to end this first half and really have some momentum and really put some pressure on Mo to make some moves when you come back after the All-Star break.
And hello, Gene. How are you doing tonight? Thank you for joining in and listening to us. Like I said, lots of stuff to talk about tonight. And happy Bobby Bonilla Day to you too, Gene. I know you understand what Bobby Bonilla Day is all about. So happy Bobby Bonilla Day to you as well. I want to jump back to the All-Stars real quick because one guy that did not get a starting nod and is in the lineup tonight for the Cardinals is catcher Yadier Molina. Buster Posey gets the nod as the starter this year once again. And it kind of galls me just a little bit that a guy like Posey is getting a chance to start at the catching position when a guy like Yadi is still playing at such a high level, still a consistent offensive threat, defensive threat, and rotation specialist. Is it just a matter of, fans essentially outvoting Yadier Molina? Are there more people voting in San Francisco than there are in St. Louis? Because that's surprising considering how great St. Louis fans are at being able to push these guys across the finish line. How is Buster Posey starting at catcher instead of Yadier Molina?
I think it's because of the fact that Yadi, while he's respected, isn't really liked among a lot of fan bases. There's a lot of Cubs fans that are going to vote for whoever is the starting catcher other than Yadier Molina. There's a lot of Reds fans that are going to vote for anybody but Yadier Molina. There's the Pirates fans, Mets fans that still remember Yadi's big home run in 06, that boo him every time he goes there. So there's a lot of fan bases that are going to vote for anybody but Yadier Molina. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Plus, since they've done the voting online, I really don't. They need to change the way they do the voting. I mean, I think it needs to go back to. I know a lot of people don't miss the days of the paper ballots at the ballpark, but I think more actual baseball fans really vote that way than when it's online because people just randomly vote 20 times online for somebody, and I just don't think it's a fair representation of who should really be there the way they do it now.
Well, and nothing was like sitting at the stadium, eating your hot dog, getting that paper ballot, punching out the chads, and really voting for who you wanted to vote for. And it's a lost thing. I know with technology, it does make it easier to compile votes and things of that nature. You get a little bit more of a real time update on this, but man, just there was nothing like getting those paper ballots and grabbing a pencil and just poop, 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 and really and seeing the collection of names on there too. That's the thing that always got me, because whenever I would be doing my ballot, especially the outfielders, I'd look at it and I'd be like, okay, yeah. Oh crap! There's like 20 guys on here I could really vote for in this, and you had to really make a tough decision. Well, like you said, now with these online ballots, you could put 20 in for these 3 outfielders and 20 in for these 3 outfielders and 20 in for these 3 outfielders. And then you satisfy your lust for voting for these guys. But in reality, you're not really doing much, but just making sure everybody gets an equal share. Whereas the paper ballots, you had to really, really make a decision on who you wanted to represent in the All-Star game. And I think you're right. I think it was more of a true representation of who people really, really wanted in the All-Star game. And yes, maybe that meant the starting infield was all Cardinals or all Yankees. But, that's the way it is. If that's how people voted, that's how people voted. And I think that gets lost nowadays for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, you can look at it since they've gone online. Remember a couple of years ago when, the whole team was the Cubs the year they went to the World Series because of the online voting?
Yeah.
Jason Hayward was hitting 180 and he made the All-Star team.
Yeah, I do remember that. I remember that. At least when, the Yankees teams, basically made the All-Star team, it was because they all still were really good. They were the best players at their positions. I mean, how do you go against Derek Jeter or Bernie Williams or Mariano Rivera or Jorge Posada or Tino Martinez? I mean, you could literally name every single spot, and those guys are the best at that position. So it does. It makes you question all of that. And I understand it's about trying to reach a new generation and all that kind of stuff. But if you're reaching a new generation that doesn't really have the respect and the just the knowledge of baseball, then you're going to get what you got with the Cubs from a few years ago.
Yeah. And I still remember how cool it was in the 80s, the year that the National League starting infield, 3/4 of it were Cardinals. It was Ozzie Smith, Tommy Hearn, Jack Clark starting at short, second, and first, and Terry Pendleton was the backup third baseman that year. So all 4 of your starting infielders were on that All-Star team, and that was a pretty neat thing back then.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. We're talking about the Cardinals being in Colorado tonight. We have talked in the past about the trade acquisitions that the Cardinals might be looking at as we approach the trade deadline. The big story out today was that Joey Gallo is the Cardinals' prime target for a trade as we get closer to the trade deadline. We've talked about Gallo in the past, the last couple of days, especially about potentially him coming into St. Louis, maybe along with Kyle Gibson to kind of shore up that rotation. You basically said 2 things that went out today, and it absolutely blew up the St. Louis sports talk market. What did you hear today after that news came out that he was the number 1 target for the Cardinals during the trade deadline?
Yeah, and like you said, Greg Amsinger was the one who went out and said that he believed that Gallo was the number 1. And, that's been everywhere today after that. The really interesting thing about that is then, like you're saying, what do they do about their pitching? And the rumors that I heard after that, everybody wants Max Scherzer. Everybody wants Jose Barrios from Minnesota. Probably neither one of those guys are actually going to be available. I mean, the Nationals are 2 games out. I don't think Scherzer is going to be available. And Barrios, I'd be surprised. I mean, I think the Twins are going to have to be blown away. I think the Cardinals, and I heard this a couple of times today, John Gray from the Rockies may be the pitching target that the Cardinals really need to look at, because Gray's a guy that if you get him, he's been an all-star in Colorado in the past and is a solid pitcher. I think he's got a sub-mid 3s ERA this year. Maybe if the Cardinals can get him at a low cost, a couple of mid-level prospects possibly could get you Gray, and you get him out of Colorado, that might be a guy that could really solidify the middle of your rotation anyway. You're hoping that Jack's going to come back at some point in August and then have him and Waino as your 3 guys going into the playoffs. And then, the other guy that everybody's kind of hoping could be a package deal with Gallo is Kyle Gibson. The only thing with Gibson, and a lot of people are talking about this now, he's pitched so well that the asking price for Kyle Gibson could be astronomical, especially since he does have a year of control next year as well. So, while I would love to see that, Joey Gallo may be the guy that if the Cardinals really want to have an impact move, Gallo's probably the biggest bat and maybe the biggest impact player overall that's going to be available. So if the Cardinals could get a guy like Gallo and then get a mid-level pitcher and not have to give up a ton for either one of them, I mean, that would be a huge win-win for the Cardinals, I think. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right there too. I mean, we talked about this in our text chain earlier today about especially the pitchers. I'm like, if Gallo's the number one target, you have to always also make sure you're going after a pitcher, because it's not so much that they need a pitcher, but with all the injuries that they have suffered this year, it's nice to have a safety blanket in a sense. Flaherty will probably be coming back. You might get a Michaelis back. We talked a little bit earlier before the show about Dakota Hudson possibly at least making an appearance in the bullpen late in the season if the Cardinals are in contention and need an arm. And you've got other guys that might actually get back into the rotation as well. You may have a Matthew Libator come up as well. But if you're able to bring in that middle of the rotation guy that can spot start or be there in case somebody does, God forbid, go down with another injury, it'd be nice to have. We've seen the depth not really work out totally for the Cardinals right now. Although Carlos pitched well the other day, KK had at least another decent outing, and if you got him piggybacking with John Gant behind that, you might be able to get a 7-inning start out of those two guys. That might be the way that they go. You're starting to get your bullpen around in rotation. Jordan Hicks might be coming back very, very soon as well. So having that extra safety blanket, either as a starter or a long reliever, it's got to be something that the Cardinals have to prioritize, because they didn't do it in the offseason, and we're seeing now how it's kind of bit them in the butt. And I want to go back to Gallo real quick, because you mentioned it as well before we came on about Gallo's been a guy that's been talked about a lot over the last couple of years in regards to the Cardinals. And in the past, we've seen this happen before. Nolan Arenado, years, including the show we used to be on. We talked about it for years about bringing Nolan Arenado here. Paul Goldschmidt was another guy that for years had kind of been bandied about as a guy that would look really good in Cardinal red and eventually came here. So you said it yourself. You're like, there's got to be some smoke to this if he's been talked about for the last couple of years. And Mo might be circling the drain essentially on this trade.
Yeah, and what have we talked about the Cardinals don't have? They don't really have any left-handed power. Yeah. Gallo would be he's a left-handed Tyler O'Neill in a lot of ways, although I think Gallo probably has a little more power than O'Neill has. Somebody said, a couple of people have commented and said, oh, he's just a 220 hitter that, all he does is hit home runs. Well, that's not really true. He's been an all-star. He won a Gold Glove last year. He steals 10 to 15 bases a year. I mean, in a lot of ways, he is a left-handed Tyler O'Neill. And if you would put him just think about that for a second. If you put him in the lineup, you stick him, I don't know, you have Goldie second, you stick him third and have Arenado bookend that. Gallo's never had that kind of protection in your lineup. And then you have Tyler O'Neill to follow up Nolan. I mean, that would be a pretty scary lineup. And then Paul DeYoung after that, possibly, and Yachty. I mean, that would really make the Cardinals a really dangerous lineup. And
so does that spell like one of those things where he replaces a Dylan Carlson? Does he replace a Harrison Bader where Carlson slides? I mean, that's the other part, is where do you play him in the field, especially since, obviously the Cardinals don't have a DH.
Well, what you could do this year when you look at it is, you could kind of play all four of those guys. Probably, at this point, I think you would probably say O'Neill, Carlson, and Gallo would be your starting three, with Bader being your fourth outfielder possibly. And then, rotating, giving guys days off. You can mix and match because they're all pretty good defensive outfielders. And then you would have Gallo under control next year when you have the DH coming to the National League. So then that would solve that problem as well. So, I think you could make it work for the rest of the season where you just kind of rotate those guys and everybody gets plenty of rest. And your lineup is you're never really playing a bench guy because you got four starters playing no matter who gets in that lineup. And everybody's well rested and down the stretch. And you're good defensively as well because you have, basically four guys that could potentially be Gold Glovers at some point. So I think that would not be a bad move for the Birds, honestly.
Yeah, like you said, if they can get it for the right price, it's definitely probably worth the risk and worth the gamble, because you've brought out guys like Justin Williams and Lane Thomas and studs, and they just haven't been able to do anything. So even if that means putting Harrison Bader on the bench and subbing him in as a defensive replacement, as a guy that can pinch run and really create havoc on the bases, that's another piece right there. You get a guy, maybe Gallo comes up, gets on base, and the Cardinals are in a tie game, and you're like, okay, we got to have defensive capabilities. And if we put Harrison Bader on first, he can steal a base. He doesn't have to worry about hitting to get on. He can just do his thing. It definitely does give you a lot of pieces that can, set your lineup and make this team pretty dangerous. The other piece I wanted to get to on this is, because they're in Colorado, there's a story out from Patrick Saunders, a Colorado beat writer. He tweeted out today, he goes, "So Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story had dinner last night. Are they cooking up a way to find a way to get him to St. Louis?" And we talked a little bit about this last night. Paul DeJong did drive in the Cardinals' first run tonight. So, what can you say about that? But is it possible, a slight outside chance? You talk about Gray being a guy that could be coming to St. Louis. Would the Cardinals be able to maybe find a way to package Story in that deal as well and bring him over?
Yeah, I guess it's possible. From the Rockies' point of view, if you're going to move on from Trevor Story, why not get a guy in Paul DeJong who you've got under control for a couple of years? He's pretty cheap, making $5, $6, $7 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years, in his late 20s. So you're going to get him in the prime of his career, and maybe he can put up similar type numbers to a Trevor Story. So maybe, if you can get a pitcher in that deal, maybe you make that deal. I know I argued against it last night, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what, if you can somehow get a pitcher in that deal as well, maybe that is something the Cardinals look at. So we'll see. I can't hardly imagine the Rockies are really excited about sending both of their superstars to the Cardinals in one season. But, if they'll do it, sure, let's go.
Yeah, would you ask for $25 million in cash as well, or would you just maybe leave that off to the side?
Yeah, you might want to leave that one alone,
That would be great. We got Trevor Story, Gray, and $25 million too. What is going on in Colorado? All right, we got to pull away from the fun that we're having with baseball, and we do have to talk a little bit about something serious that's going on out in LA, and that's the Trevor Bauer situation. If you haven't heard, although I don't know how you haven't, because it's kind of everywhere as well, he's basically got some sexual assault allegations coming at him, depicting domestic violence amid 2 sexual encounters that he had with a woman earlier this year. Basically, he's been accused of choking her until she lost consciousness, punching her in several areas of the body, and then leaving her with injuries that required hospitalization. Now, this is all coming from a story from ESPN. Bauer's representatives released a statement denying the assault, saying the encounters were wholly consensual. He's still in line to start on Sunday in Washington against the Nationals, and Major League Baseball has opened an investigation into this, but because he was not arrested and because he has come out and denied these allegations, they haven't suspended him at this point, although they have every right to, as far as the collective bargaining agreement is concerned. They're waiting for either the police report or their own internal investigation to be concluded before they make a move on as far as suspending him goes. But what do you make of this story? In this day and age of the Me Too movement, and really just trying to, protect everybody in a sense, this is another one of those where you go, man, you don't want to not believe the woman in this instance, because she's a victim if this is the case. But on the other side of it, if Trevor Bauer has evidence and things to support his story, it's just another intense story, and one that you don't really want to talk about, but you have to, because the right story has to come out and the truth has to come out at some point in this.
Yeah, it does. And, this is one of the biggest superstars in baseball that have ever had these kind of accusations against them, really. While they were still in the prime of their careers, we've seen it happen to guys who were former superstars that were kind of at the tail end of their career, that these kind of things have come out. But, Trevor Bauer is kind of a polarizing figure in the sports world as is. And like you said, some reports make it sound like it was consensual, that she wanted, a rough sexual experience, and that's what he provided her apparently. But like you said, with the Me Too movement and the way everything is right now, even if it was somewhat consensual, you still wonder if he's not going to face some pretty serious ramifications from all of this.
Yeah, he may get suspended for an extended period of time. His reputation, one way or the other, is going to take a massive hit, and that pales in comparison to the violence and the injuries this woman has sustained. Whether she wanted this consensual arrangement or not, it's still scars that she's going to have to bear, and you hate that it has to come to light in public. You hope that A, it never happens, but B, if it does, that she doesn't have to continue to relive it over and over again by having to talk about it and prove herself in that instance. So it's just a story that's going to bear watching as we go along, and I'll be perfectly honest. You look at this and then you sit there and go, there was a story a couple months ago about a guy down in Houston, Mr. Deshaun Watson, a bunch of sexual allegations that came out against him. We haven't heard a lick of anything in that instance for a very long time. And it's a little troubling in a sense, because you look at it and you go, there was so much around it. And then regardless on if it's true or not, all of a sudden there's nothing there. So is it sweeping under the rug things that actually happened? Or is it nothing really did happen and we made a big deal about something and almost ran a man through the mud in a sense because of nothing? And both of those scenarios are not good. Like, they're not. I just don't understand how we can't figure out a way to protect everybody in a sense, but also get this through the process so that people can at least find some sort of closure.
Yeah, you're right. And the Deshaun Watson thing is just weird. The lawyer that brought all of those charges, was so loud and so boisterous, and they had all this proof and they had all this evidence. And then Watson's attorneys kind of contradicted it and said, well, we have evidence here that says otherwise. And it was like, okay, well, this is going to play out pretty soon and we're going to get some kind of a resolve to this. And then it was just like both sides just disappeared and nobody even mentions it. Like, training camp's like 3 weeks away and we have no idea if Deshaun Watson can play, if he can't play, if he's going to play in Houston, if he's guilty of anything, if he's not. I mean, and it's weird that Deshaun Watson hasn't been in public saying anything at all. There for a while he was so adamantly defending himself. But like I said, it's like everybody just completely disappeared on this whole thing.
Yeah, they really have. And that actually leads us perfect segue into our NFL news and notes, because a couple of things have come out in regards to stuff similar to this. If you didn't know, the Washington football team was fined $10 million, and Daniel Snyder has been removed from day-to-day operations after an investigation into his team's workplace culture, which included a lot of these sorts of things: sexual assault, bullying, things of that nature, and mainly directed towards women as well. So the investigation by the NFL basically finished. They wrapped up, and they're like, hey, we're finding you this amount. You're getting out of the day-to-day operations, although that part was actually volunteered by Snyder himself. So at least maybe a way to atone for it as well. His wife, Tanya, is actually going to be taking over the day-to-day operations of the franchise. And Daniel Snyder is going to basically focus on new stadium planning and other matters. Now, as part of the investigation, upper management's going to have to take part in training in workplace conduct, covering bullying, diversity and inclusion, LGBTQ+, etc. But the people that kind of essentially brought this out, evidence out on this, are like, this is not enough. It's a slap on the wrist. It's pocket change for these people for $10 million. Looking at everything that kind of went down in Washington, is it enough punishments, or are they lucky to have their team still?
Yeah, I kind of thought they may, with all the evidence they had and all the different accusations, I kind of thought the league may make Snyder sell the team, which I'm sure most people in Washington were praying was going to be the case. And what a weird conversation does that have to be if you're Daniel Snyder and his wife going, hey, honey, we have all these allegations and we have all these problems with things I did and let go on with women. So to try to make me look better, I'm going to have you run the team now. So we can say, hey, look, we love women. Look, my wife's running the team.
Well, and they hired Ron Rivera, obviously. They also brought in the first black GM in their history. So they did a lot of optical things to make it look like the culture was changing. And that was even something that was brought up in the article, too, was that, people saw this and they're like, okay, Rivera's respected. They brought in this gentleman to be the GM. Outside perspective was that things were changing, but the investigation really unveiled that it really hadn't changed much at the upper levels of it. And just because you're going to be going through diversity classes or inclusion classes doesn't mean you're actually going to change as a person. And that's, I think, the real fear. I mean, when all this stuff started to come out, you saw minority owners just absolutely flee the ship when it came to Washington. They started off selling off their interest in all of that. And I don't know if this is going to bring people back into the fold when it comes to the Washington football team. And I'm just like you. I'm a little surprised that the move wasn't made to have Daniel Snyder sell this team, because there was so much around it and a lot of talk by a lot of different groups about boycotting. And now here we are, and it's, oh, here's $10 million fine, and your wife gets to run the team instead of you, and you just got to go sit through a couple classes.
Yeah. Another bad look for the NFL. You know, Roger Goodell really not having a clue what he's doing when it comes to these social justice type things. You know, he just kind of sticks his foot in his mouth or stumbles around and kind of does half-hearted attempts to try to make the league look like they're trying to be socially conscious and aware. And really, you know, it's here, let's throw some money at it and get people to shut up and we'll go back to business as usual. It's kind of the way the NFL looks at things. I mean, that's really how you have to feel, because we've seen them do it time and again.
Oh, yeah, no doubt whatsoever. And I'm going to put a shout out here in this video, so when he does watch it eventually, Derek King, you need to comment on this exact topic and let us know what your thoughts are on this. And you know what? It could be an epic comment, but go ahead and comment on it, because I really want to hear what your thoughts are on that as well. Other things going on in the world of football. Aaron Rodgers' time in Green Bay is inching closer and closer to being over. We're just about 24 hours away from potentially the end of the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay. What have you been hearing as far as him potentially opting out and taking his money and running?
You know, everybody in Green Bay is kind of watching the clock tomorrow to see what happens, because he's got till about 3 o'clock, I believe, tomorrow, Green Bay time, to decide if he's going to opt out. And like we talked about the other day, if he does opt out, then he gets to keep all of his money and, you know, doesn't have to pay anything back in fines for sitting out training camp or preseason or off-season conditioning or any of that stuff. He can collect all of his money, opt out for the season, and then retire at the end of the year and walk away a really rich man, if that's really what he wants to do. Although, you know, I read an article today where just not too terribly long ago, I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 months ago, he was telling people he wanted to play into his 40s. So, you know, is he willing to swallow his pride and shake hands with Green Bay and say, all's forgiven, I'm here, let's go do this? That doesn't really seem like Aaron Rodgers' personality. I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I'm going to be really interested to see what happens tomorrow, because it wouldn't shock me if he opted out, you know, and did retire. It just really wouldn't surprise me.
If he doesn't, though, but he forces his way out of Green Bay, is there a team at this point, because we have seen a lot of teams make moves at the quarterback position, is there a team that you can see right now that would make a deal for an Aaron Rodgers to bring him in to kind of get him over the hump? I mean, obviously West Coast is probably where he'd want to go, but would a team like San Francisco make sense? Yes, I know they just drafted a quarterback as well, but he's still a couple years away. Would San Francisco entertain that move, or would there be another team that would make a move like that?
You know what? I honestly don't think Aaron Rodgers can force his way out of there. I think the Packers are basically going to say, hey, you know what? Retire. You can retire, or you can hold out and you can pay us all this money that you're going to owe us because you're sitting out, and it's up to you. Retire or sit out and pay us money back, but we're not going to trade you. I really don't think they're going to. I think they're going to force Aaron Rodgers' hand here and make him make a decision whether he really wants to continue his career or not.
Whew, man, that is just absolutely insane. I mean, I know when we went through the Brett Favre situation when Aaron Rodgers was in his rookie year as well, we were like, oh, this is a terrible thing. You know, you can't see that happening ever again. And yet here we are X amount of years later, and we're seeing the same exact thing. And it really makes you wonder what the Packers organization is really all about, because this is the unique thing about it. You know, the Packers are fan owned in a sense. So like, how does that work? You know, if management is making the decisions, but it's based off of the fan input, which I know it's not, but how does that work? Fan-owned team, but management is doing something essentially that the fans are totally against. I mean, how do you balance that in this? Because it's a really unique situation up there.
It is, although I think Aaron Rodgers has alienated a lot of Packers fans right now. I think there's a lot of Packers fans that are almost like, okay, if he doesn't want to be here, we don't want him in Green Bay. I mean, I say that, there's a lot that still do and want Aaron Rodgers to come back. But there's a certain amount of fans in Green Bay with the pride and the legacy that the Packers have, the history of the Packers and Lambeau and all of that. You know, there's a lot of people that are going, okay, if you don't want to play for this legendary franchise, then get the hell out of Green Bay and go retire, and, you know, we'll move on with Jordan Love or whatever. You know, I mean, there are some similarities to how everything went down with Brett. But, you know, Rodgers is more about his ego, and Brett was to a certain extent, but Brett was more, I don't know. I don't think it was as contentious with Brett as it is with Rodgers. I don't think he was really attacking management and saying that kind of stuff. He was just wish-washy, you know, I might retire. I might be done. Wait a minute. Maybe I do want to play. I do love the game. I am going to play, you know, I don't think Brett ever really decided, hey, I don't want to be in Green Bay. Well, he didn't, because he wanted to come back, you know, and the Packers said, oh, no, we have Aaron Rodgers. We're just going to move on. So, you know, but, you know, there was never that, hey, I want to go here or here or here. Get me out of Green Bay. Brett just wanted to be Brett and be able to decide when he was going to play. And if he didn't have to play in training camp, he didn't want to. You know, he just felt like he had that ability to decide when he was going to show up and play. And the Packers finally called him on it. But there was never the, you know, I think I want to go play in Denver. I want to go play here or there. Brett really wanted to be a Packer. It was just at the end of all of that where he said, okay, go ahead and trade me. And, you know, they did finally to the Jets, which is definitely not where he wanted to go for a year. And then he finally ended up getting to Minnesota. But so there are some similarities there, but there are a lot of differences as well as how this is all playing out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Brett Favre, it felt like Brett wanted to continue to play, but he wanted to play on his terms, whereas Green Bay wanted to make sure that they had something ready to go and move on. They didn't want to have that wishy-washy, okay, he's going to play this week, he may not play this week, what have you. And I think Brett Favre earned that right as the player he was, the veteran, the kind of person he was. I think he earned that right to maybe make a last-second decision and say, okay, you know what, no, I'm going to play this year. My body feels right. You have to also remember he was in his late 30s, early 40s. So, of course, his body's going to take a little bit longer to decide on if he's going to be able to play or not. So, I mean, I get the Packers side of things in that aspect, and I get the Favre side of it as well. And I think it all ended up working out in the end. Yes, he didn't get a chance to play his entire career in Green Bay. He did get a chance. He is back in the fold. He's been celebrated and all of that stuff back in Green Bay. So it all worked out in the end. It just didn't exactly end the way he wanted it to. This Aaron Rodgers thing is going to end badly, and it may end in a sense that you may not ever see Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay. They may not retire his jersey. They may not even celebrate him very much, if at all. That's the thing that gets me, is that it's getting that bad that he may not even be welcome in Green Bay after this. Yeah,
it's going to be ugly. You know, and the biggest difference that I see between the two of them is, you know, Brett loved football. You know, Brett Favre lived and breathed football. You saw the joy. That's why I was a huge Brett Favre fan, because he was like a little kid on the football field. I don't get that same sense watching Aaron Rodgers that Aaron Rodgers loves football. You know, he doesn't have that. He doesn't seem to have that joy, that just love of the game that Brett does. To me, Aaron Rodgers seems like a guy who's playing because, hey, I'm going to make a bunch of money, and then if some other opportunity comes along where I can make money and not have to get hurt, I'll do that. You know, I just don't think that he has the same love for the game or the respect for the game that Brett did.
No, not at all. Not at all. And another guy that had, I would think, a decent love for the game. He was a dynamic player at USC. It's Reggie Bush. And with the NCAA decision yesterday about being able to start paying athletes for their likenesses, images, and all that stuff, it got Reggie Bush back in the news because he wants his Heisman back, and he wants his statistics reinstated, because essentially what he did wasn't wrong. It's what everybody else was doing, and now that it's accepted by the NCAA, he wants his Heisman back and he wants his statistics back. He basically, back in the day when he was playing at USC, as a student athlete, he and his family members accepted cash, travel expenses, and a San Diego area home for his parents to live in rent-free for just over a year, plus $10,000 to furnish it. All of this was provided to him when he was at USC. He believes, and I think his camp believes, that all of that is exactly, in a sense, what the NCAA is saying student athletes can do now. And because of that, retroactively, they should give him his Heisman back and reinstate his statistics and give USC their championships back and all of that stuff. I get the argument because I don't think he did anything egregious, and I don't think USC, in a sense, paid him to play there. I think they they helped set him up while he was there. I don't think it's still technically right. It's not apples to apples, but I don't know. I don't think he gets his Heisman back. I don't think his statistics are reinstated. I get his argument, but I don't think it's in the same spirit as what the NCAA is doing now for student athletes.
No, I mean, it was against the rules there. What he did, I mean, what his family accepted at the time was illegal. That would be, and I understand, like you said, I understand his point. I get what he's trying to say, but that would be like, okay, say you were a pot dealer 20 years ago and you spent a bunch of years in jail, and now that marijuana is legal, you think that you should get reimbursed for the years you spent in jail and, have your record expunged and everything is wonderful because, hey, it's okay now. So why don't I get that from them? You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
You can't go back and go, hey, because it's legal now, when I did it, it was illegal. So you should reimburse me and take away all my past offenses because it's okay now. It just doesn't work like that.
No, it really doesn't. And like I said, it's not like he did something really egregiously illegal, but it was against the rules at that point in time. And I get it. And you can also make the argument that the NCAA and groups like, EA Sports were stealing these people's likenesses to put in games and making money off of them. Like, I get it's a very convoluted argument for sure. Student athletes were totally taken advantage of throughout the years up until yesterday. In a sense, they've been taking advantage of that whole time. And now they're going to get the chance to make their money off of their likenesses. And in fact, a bunch of student athletes have already signed sponsorship deals. I believe Boost Mobile signed a pair of twin women's basketball players. Barstool Sports has signed a couple of student athletes as well. So, they are getting paid now. But you can't go back and look at it in hindsight and say, oh, well, because it's legal now, like you said, it doesn't matter. What you did then was against the rules. You have to be punished for it. You have to pay for it. And honestly, Reggie, you got money. I mean, you got paid in the NFL. I think he got paid by St. Louis too because of the whole dome incident as well. That's a whole different story. It's an injury that should never have happened. I hope he's fully recovered from it. I totally get that. Did not wish any ill will on Reggie Bush in that instance whatsoever. But come on, man. It's the Heisman. Yes, it's a prestigious honor. Just because you don't have the trophy and just because you don't have the accolades doesn't mean people aren't going to sit there and say, oh man, you're not a Heisman winner. Dude, you had an electric season. You played well on the field. You are a Heisman Trophy winner in all of our minds. You don't need the trophy for that. And the stats are stats. I mean, yes, we go back and look at them, but they're in the past. Forget about it. You had a great college career. You had a great NFL career. Yes, you didn't win any championships per se, but people are going to remember you for what you did on the field, and that should be enough.
Right. And again, like we said, if Reggie Bush tries to do that and wins, if the NCAA says, okay, you get your Heisman back and you get your stats back, then does a team like SMU that got the death penalty for paying players, do all of a sudden you say, okay, well, we'll take that away and you get all those wins back and we'll help you rebuild your program that we pretty much destroyed for the last 30 years because of it? So, I mean, that's a pretty slippery slope. You really couldn't do that even if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the SMU case, in a sense, though, the argument would still hold because the new laws basically still say schools can't pay athletes to play there in a sense. So I think that at least in that instance, the NCAA would have a say. But there are many, many other examples out there of that where Maurice Claret, he would be another one of those guys that you would look at and go, his life could be completely different if what had happened to him in college wouldn't have happened because of the loss. You can't go back and change everything that went down after that. You can't change that. So it's the same sort of thing. What happened in the past has happened. You have to deal with it and live with it. But starting now, move forward in a positive direction. That's about all you can really say on that. And unfortunately, in some cases, it hurt people. And in some cases, it doesn't really matter. But you have to deal with it and you have to live with it and move on.
Right.
So. Sorry, I got a little worked up on that one. I don't really know why. I mean, it's not like I'm a Reggie Bush hater or anything like that. That game between them and Texas with Vince Young, that was a hell of a game. Like I have no ill will towards Reggie Bush, but for some reason that just really got me.
Man, those were some fun USC teams to watch when they had that run of quarterbacks come through USC, and then you had Reggie, and those were some good teams. Fun college football at that point in time.
It really, really was. That was a great time in college football. So hopefully we can get back to that. I think we will. I mean, I know we're seeing a lot with Alabama and the SEC, and it seems like it's absolutely dominated by them. But I think we're going to start to see a lot of really, really good college football teams across the country, at least, especially starting this year for sure. All right, let's jump over to the NHL real quick because it's not like it's directly affected the Blues in a sense, but Jonathan Toews missed all of last season, and no one, including himself, really knew why he wasn't feeling well. And it wasn't until today that he basically came out and talked about it. I know we're talking about a Blackhawk. I know we're talking about a captain, probably one of the more hated Blackhawks in St. Louis, but you have to feel for a guy that went a long time without really knowing what was wrong. And this one kind of hit close to me because I'm a Crohn's sufferer. And for me, it took me 6 months to be diagnosed with my disease. And in that time frame, I dropped down to 110 pounds. Okay. I'm 6'2". I was a skeleton while trying to figure out what was wrong with me. So many things going wrong. And I can empathize with Jonathan Toews in this instance because he went months without really knowing what it was that he was suffering from and why he wasn't getting better. And today he kind of came out and explained why he missed all of last season. He was diagnosed with chronic immune response syndrome. Basically, this is a response where your immune system overreacts to everything you do, whether it's walking up the stairs, whether it's exercising, whatever it is, it overreacts to it and attacks everything. It's often associated with exposure to toxins and mold. And honestly, it could affect his career going forward. I mean, he's going to be coming back. He's going to be playing next year. But there are a lot of things that go into, like, basically the doctors told him, in order to kind of improve on this, you may have to completely change your entire way of life. And yet here's Jonathan Toews saying, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to go back. I'm going to play hockey. I'm going to finish out my career. And once again, it's a Blackhawk. It's the captain. It's Toews. It's one of the guys that we hate here the most in St. Louis. But you have to give the respect card to him in this instance where he knows what he's now suffering from, and he's yet going to come back and play some more. So I'm not going to root for him openly, but I will say this. I will be watching Jonathan Toews a little bit more closely the rest of his career and empathizing with him as someone that suffers from an invisible disease as myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you feel for anybody that has those kind of health issues and doesn't know what they're dealing with, can't figure out what it is or how to treat it. And so now that he knows, you hope that he can recover and get his career back and be the player that he was and just have a healthy life and just feel good and be in good shape moving forward.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's the thing with these invisible diseases. You know, you can say you have this, you can say you have that. And when people look at you and they go, well, you look fine. It's like, that's not it. It's not about looking fine. It's about what's going on inside and the fatigue level. And this is with the chronic immune thing. It can sap you quick. It can be deadly. I mean, medicine nowadays has advanced so far that a lot of these things can be handled very, very easily. But Crohn's disease, this chronic immune response syndrome, all of these invisible diseases, they can still kill you if you don't treat them and treat yourself properly. And it's one of those things that gets me because I have something like this that you really need to continue to talk about it. And the fact that he actually came out today and talked about it was a huge step, because we know he's the captain. We know he's an outspoken player in a sense, but you really don't hear Jonathan Toews talk a whole lot about himself. And the fact that he finally was like, hey, look, I got to at least tell you guys what's going on to let you know why I hadn't played this year and all that. That took a lot for him. And it takes a lot for all of us with invisible diseases to actually step out and talk about it, because we see ourselves as somebody that goes, okay, I know people can't see it, so I can't really complain about it, because if I complain, people are going to look at me and say, oh, well, you look healthy and blah, blah, blah. So for him to come out and talk about it, dude, I applaud you. Honestly, we're a St. Louis-based show, but I'd love to have him on to talk about it too, because it's something that needs to be continued to be discussed. So just a little personal story for me, in a sense that I wanted to make sure we get that out there, because it is something that needs to be talked about and something that needs to be watched.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you have a guy like Toews that has that and then is willing to talk about it, that may help other people that are embarrassed to talk about it, or to say, hey, here's what's going on with me. Maybe that'll help other people to deal with it, or come out and admit that they have an issue with, if they're afraid to talk about it, like you said, because they think, okay, everybody thinks I look fine. If I complain, people are going to think there's something, that I'm just making something up or whatever. So yeah, hopefully this helps lead to more conversation and more people being able to deal with the health problems that they have. And talking about just health problems in general, that leads us to the fact that the show is going to be doing some stuff with the National Cancer Society here coming up this fall. We're going to be involved with the Real Men Wear Pink campaign and doing some stuff. So we're going to be helping the Cancer Society, and just another thing that we can do and help people, because you talk about silent diseases and any disease, but cancer is just nasty. It's affected another member of my family just recently that's battling it. And so, it's something that we can do and help people and spread the word. And so looking forward to teaming with them, and teaming with different cancer societies around the country is something that we've done the last couple of years on other shows that we've worked with. And so excited to do this again this year and do the Real Men Wear Pink campaign as we move into the fall.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that for sure. I mean, any chance we get to help any organization is good in my book. Other NHL news. So when the collective bargaining agreement was signed just recently between the NHL and the NHLPA, there was a caveat in there that the NHL would essentially allow their players to play in the 2020 Olympics. Now, there was a little bit more to that in a sense, whereas it's more of the NHL negotiating in good faith with the IOC to allow their players to go play. It's not all hunky-dory, apparently. There's still not any closer to coming to terms on NHL players playing in the 2022 Olympics. And that's getting a lot of people very, very worried, because is it the NHL not negotiating in good faith? Is it the IOC not finding a way to get these players there? Is it the Board of Governors basically saying, hey, we don't want to stop the season. We don't want to stop the flow of money coming in? I mean, there's a lot of different pieces that are going on around this. And a lot of players are like, look, we want to play in the Olympics. We got to find a way to make this work. Now, it's not on the deathbed right now. The NHL is really wanting to have a schedule released for next year before the expansion draft, which is about July 23rd. They want to have a schedule that's able to go out at least to say, hey, this is when we're planning on playing. They need to come to a decision here very quickly within the next 2 weeks or so to decide on whether these guys are going to be playing in the Olympics. Now, there have been last-minute deals. Obviously, the CBA has gone down to the wire the last couple of times as well. So there's precedent for these deals to be made at the last minute. Are you at all worried that the NHL will not allow their players to go play in Beijing in 2022, or will they find that last-minute midnight deal?
I would hope that they would find the last-minute midnight deal, because while these guys want to play professionally and make money and play for the teams that they play for, professionally, they also feel that desire to play for their country and represent them in the Olympics. So I hope they get that opportunity and the league comes to a deal so those guys can do that and go represent their countries and play for that honor of their country.
And because it is one of the most epic scenes really to think. I mean, go back to the Miracle on Ice in 1980. You had the Canadian Golden Goal in Vancouver. I mean, I know hockey is a niche sport, but for some reason on the Olympic stage, it gets people worked up. I mean, people that are not hockey fans become hockey fans. So having the best of the best would be ideal. And if you look at the last Olympics, the numbers for hockey were terrible. I mean, the gold medal matchup wasn't even on national television. It was on cable because that's how poorly the viewership numbers were. That's saying something. And yes, it was the Republic of Russia versus Germany, so it wasn't the heavy hitters per se in that gold medal matchup. But still, I mean, it's not good, and they need NHL players if they're going to have any semblance of ratings when it comes to the 2022 Olympics. So definitely looking forward to that because I want to see, and I know it's 2 years away or a year away, but I want to see Ovechkin one more time in the Olympics. I want to see a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko. I want to see a TJ Oshie maybe one more time in the Olympics as well. Like, I want to see these guys represent on the ice and really see if the U.S. can come away with another gold medal here very, very soon as well. So it's going to be real interesting to see how this plays out. I do think they'll get a deal done. It's going to be interesting once again because with the new television deal, ESPN and ABC hold a lot of the NHL rights, not NBC anymore. So anything that goes on in the Olympics essentially can't be used by ESPN or ABC unless some sort of deal is made there as well. So there's a lot more intricacies that are going into this than just, okay, the NHL is shut down for 2 weeks and the owners don't make money and you go from there. It's the TV rights, it's viewership, it's highlights, all that stuff that goes into it that could make this a lot more difficult than it actually should be. Yeah,
I mean, like you said, there are a lot more obstacles to it, but you would think when you're talking about national pride in the Olympics that the TV networks could figure out a way to work out that deal where it works out financially for everybody.
Agreed, 100%. All right, a couple more things before we get out of here. Game 5 of the Eastern Conference is wrapping up right now, just under 10 seconds to go. The Bucks hold a 123-112 lead, so they're going to hold on for this game and take a 3-2 series lead, and that's without Giannis playing tonight and no Trae Young for the Hawks. If you look at the Bucks, they were led tonight by let's see, where am I at? I almost lost it there for a second. Brook Lopez, 33 points. Yes, the total stud that is Brook Lopez leading the way there. Chris Middleton, 26 points. Drew Holiday, 25 points. Bobby Portis, 22 points. So the Bucks had 3 players with over 20 points tonight. PJ Tucker, Chris Middleton each had double-digit rebounds. Drew Holiday with 13 assists tonight. So the guys that they needed to step up and be big did that tonight. Now, over on the Hawks side, Bogdan Bogdanovic had 28 points tonight, as well as Danilo Gallinari with 19. Bogdanovic was a guy that I had labeled as the guy that needed to step up for the Hawks with Trae Young out tonight, and he did. He played a very, very good game. Unfortunately, no one else really for the Hawks did. I mean, they had a couple of other standouts. Lou Williams, 17 points. Collins, 19 points. So they had guys that could score. It just didn't seem like it was enough. And the Bucks take that 3-2 series lead. You pegged the Bucks as the team that's going to advance in the Eastern Conference. Even without Giannis, you still think they can beat the Hawks. Now, if they do, you and I were talking before the show that if Giannis is out, this is the Suns' championship essentially to lose, right?
I would think so. Although you would hope that Giannis is able to come back for the finals at least at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tough for anybody to beat the Suns the way they've played in the playoffs up to this point. But you hope Giannis comes back because with that supporting cast, if it ends up being Milwaukee and Phoenix, you've got some superstars and then you've got a really good supporting cast for both teams. That could be a really, really good series if it ends up being Phoenix and Milwaukee.
And it's not a ratings darling that the NBA is going to get here with Milwaukee potentially and Phoenix. Even if it's Atlanta and Phoenix, the ratings aren't going to be phenomenal. And that's really sad because, like you said, you're going to have superstars at both levels on both sides, and you're going to have good supporting casts on both levels as well. And I think this is going to be one of those series is that it's probably going to be an epic finals series. And a lot of people are going to miss out on it because they don't know enough about Milwaukee or even Phoenix for that matter to really tune in. And it's a real shame because, like you said, we could get a hell of an NBA Finals this year.
Yeah, it's going to be some exciting basketball. You would hope that people will check it out and see some of these rising stars as they try to really make names for themselves.
Very, very true. And one final check on the Cardinals game before we get out of here. Top of the fifth, it's a 2-2 game. Paul Goldschmidt has a solo home run tonight. Adam Wainwright's been dancing in and out of trouble all night. He just got out of a second and third one-out jam without giving up a run. 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned, a walk, and 2 strikeouts for Adam Wainwright tonight. So another potentially quality start for Mr. Wainwright. It needs to be a good first step in Colorado tonight. The Cardinals need to win this game, and I feel like they need to win it convincingly, especially with Johan Oviedo going tomorrow night. Are you in the same mindset? You got to have a statement win tonight?
Yeah. This is almost a must-win tonight when you look at the fact that you have Oviedo and Carlos and KK pitching the rest of the series. So, yeah, you definitely want to really make a big statement with Bueno out there.
Most definitely. Well, man, Scott, you got to get to bed because you got another early day tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and take off here on Toasted Tavern. Make sure you come back every night at 9 o'clock for all of your sports need, Monday through Friday. Make sure you pull up that stool, grab a beverage, and join us every night in the tavern at 9 o'clock. For Scott, I am Wags. Have a great rest of your night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, it's you, man, here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the man called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.